functions are blocks of code that enable us not to repeat ourselves. Let me give you an example. So I'm going to be giving you an example of what a function is. So this is a function that greets somebody with a hello message. So this is our function. So basically what we could do practically is we could reuse this function a number of times. We could use it a number of times to greet. So we could say, for example, greet. So each time we say greet, it's going to print hello. So you see, so we want to say greet once, so we get hello. Then we could repeat this as many times as we want, and we see that it's abstracting away, writing that hello a number of times. So you see, we have another greet here. So now how many hellos do we expect to have? We're going to have hello as the number of this. So this is how you define a function, and this is what it means to call the function. So you've defined a function here, and you're calling the function. So let's execute now. You see, they are hello, 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 and hello. So you are writing, so this function is helping us not to repeat ourselves, writing this print a number of times. So each time you execute it here, so functions can actually execute also to result. So I'm going to be giving you these two examples and introducing something called a return statement. So let's consider these two examples here. So we have this function here. So here we are saying this function returns 3. And then here we are saying this function actually prints 3. So there are two functions here. One is returning 3. So let's see what happens here. So I'm going to be showing you that the one that returns 3 can be assigned to a variable and will actually give us, the variable will actually print 3. So let's see. So here, what I'm doing is that I'm creating two values here. I'm creating value 2 to print 3. I am creating value to return 3. So let's see what happens now. What do you think will be the value for value? And what will be the value for value 2? So let's see it in action now. So you see here, value is 3 because this function is actually returning 3. So it will return the value 3 and assign it to value. So it will return this function returns 3 and assigns that value to the value here. So the value becomes 3 in this line, in this very line here. But in this line, because we are just printing, it will actually not return anything. So that's why, for example, we have none here. So look at this line, we have none here. Because so this is how returns work. So functions can have return statements attached to them, and functions can also not have return statement attached to them. So, and you could also define a function without. So the next thing we are going to be looking at now is passing parameters to functions. So, or parameters or arguments to functions. So we're going to look at this function that calculates the age. So we are defining the function, for example, that calculates the age using the year of birth and the current year. So let's look at this function, for example. So you see in this function, we are actually passing in parameters. So it has a return value, but not only that it has a return value, we are passing in parameters. And I want to show you how this function works. So now we can execute it a number of times. So look at it here. So we can say, for example, print age. So print age, and then we can provide the year of birth here is 1989. And then the current year, let's assume that the current year for this one was 2056. So here we are also passing in the year of birth because you can see here that we have a default argument. So functions can, apart from the fact that they could have parameters, they could also have parameters that have default arguments. So, and you make sure that the one with default argument comes to the end. You don't start the one with default argument at the beginning. For example, you don't say, for example, current year equals to 2024 at the beginning. And you could also see here that in most of the cases here, I decided to pass just a single argument. So what happens is that this 1989 maps to the year of birth, while this 2056 maps to current year. So when we decide to pass a value here, it is overriding this value here. But when we did not pass a value, it uses the default value that is being passed into this definition of this function here. And you see here, when we execute this, look at what happens. So in 2056, someone born in 1989 will be 67 years. Someone born in 1960 in 2024 will be 64 years. So you see how we are able to define a function that does not just have argument, but also argument with default parameters. So let's look at another function too. So I'll just be showing you another example of a function, another function here. So we have this function. So let's say, for example, we are creating a function here called greet Olatunjis. So this function is supposed to greet. So here we're passing the first name and also we're passing the default parameter here. And then we are printing, we are not returning any value as in here. Here we are just decided, we are printing a formatted string of the first name, hello, first name and last name. So when we decide to run this on this, You see what we're going to get. So let's execute this and see. So you see, it says it takes each of the names in the list. So here it goes through the list for name in this Olatunji's list, and it greets all of them. So, and you can see here, hello, Sarah. So it takes the first name. But in this case, because the last name, the first name is given here from this list, but the last name is is a default parameter here passed here. So you could see what is happening here, that we don't need to provide the last name here. So it loops through the list, picks the name, for example, Sarah, gets the last name from the definition of the function and prints it out like hello, Sarah. And in this case here we have another list. We are also using the same greet Olatunji's function, but here we are passing the first name and also providing an actual last name, which will override this default last name that we provided here. This is how we work with functions in Python. So in the next section, we are going to be looking at how to work with files.